No, that's real nice. Yeah, that's... I'm back! And things are better than ever. So you may have noticed things are looking a little different around here, a little more golden and
Hey Chris, where you been? It's been almost a year since your last video.
That's a personal question. Here, I've been here. Listen, for the past year I've been riding out the high of an unexpectedly well-performing video, and instead of riding that success to make more videos, I sat in paralysis as my world dissolved around me and I attempted and failed to create bigger and better creations, split in every direction by those who demanded more and more of my time until everything came crashing down around me in a pit of despair, lies, theft, and deceit, wallowing in the Kafkaesque black hole that is existence, while I attempted to reconstruct my life from the ground up as I came to discover I wasn't the failure I thought I was, but rather surrounded by the wrong people who were no good for me, raised up from the muck over the past 6 months by my loving and supportive friends as I have come to this point before you, a better man, one who's woke up and found that he was strong. Also, the garage flooded. Also that, yeah, so the flood really messed up a lot of stuff and I put off cleaning it for a good long while. Because, speaking of, also, ADD. Oh, right, 3D printing. Whoa. What? Oh. However, clear all this stuff out because I got some cool stuff to show you today. I was asked by Duramic if I would review their filament here. They sent me 2 spools of the gold silk PLA, only asking for an honest Amazon review, but I ended up printing so much that I bought a 3rd spool myself and had so much fun doing that I just wanted to share it with y'all. So, initial impressions. The packaging is nice, but the unexpected surprise was the resealable plastic container. I've noticed not all come like that, and if you live somewhere with high humidity, this is going to be really helpful. I started small with a gold dragon. The gold dragon is the official coin of Waterdeep. Waterdeep is a city in the Forgotten Realms settings of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, all the models I'm going to be sharing should be available on Thingiverse, and I will link any models that I show you in the description. I then moved on to a bust of Leia in her slave outfit. They were both done on my Flashforge Finder prior to its quick drop and sudden stop. You can see here when I printed it, the details on here are amazing. I think I did a 0.08 layer height on here, which is probably the only reason I actually got those details back in here. But the amazing thing was no real stringing. Generally, silk PLA is a lot stringier when you print them. However, at least the way the settings that I had, I didn't deal with a lot of strings, which was really nice. I then moved on to a larger scale print. Now let me introduce you to the Lady of Pain. For my D&D campaign, if my players ever visit the city of Sigil, I want the mask of the Lady of Pain to hang above me, should they decide to step out of line as she rules the city with an iron, impartial fist. My initial attempt was to print it flat, but found that the layer lines to be an issue, so I also tried to print it standing up. I could get the max size a little larger, but I also spent a lot more on supports and sadly dropped it on the corner here. The model is actually supposed to be a coin that I upscaled as big as I could get, laying down flat on my CR6 Max. Now, I originally tried flat because it used the least amount of filament, the least amount of supports, but as you might notice, there is issues with layer height when you get to the flat portions of the top here. Like the flat part of the coin looks great, the face looks great. I think I went with either 0.08 or 0.12 on the layer height. I think it was 0.12 on the layer height. Although you did end up with the tips here, ended up with a bit of stringing. But let's go bigger, shall we? To try and deal with the layer lines, I tried printing her straight up. Now, the big issue here is this uses a lot more filament. Now, I was able to obviously get it much bigger because while this was laying flat, you could only do it so many ways. This I printed diagonally along my print volume on the CR6 Max, which is a 400mm cubed build volume. The problem that I ran into down here, even with supports, tips just cracked off, which meant these layers lines were just absolute trash. That's probably down to settings, like if I worked with the settings more, but unfortunately, like the better you get with the supports here, the better supports get everywhere, and you start using a lot of filament and it takes a lot of time. This print took me over a day, which isn't my longest print, but it's definitely getting up there. So I tried to optimize between speed and quality, but unfortunately, these tips down here got sacrificed as a result. And I'm gonna get the supports off of here so you can kind of see what it's like with this as well. Whew. Now here's where you can really see the difference that the direction makes when it comes to the support. This right here, this is everything that I peeled off of this guy, the one I printed flat. Whereas the one I printed tall, I actually found the missing bit to the bottom there. But these are all of the supports that I pulled off of the one I printed up tall. Now, the irony of it is because of the size difference and the angle difference. The smaller one, the one that was printed flat, was actually more difficult and took longer to remove, way less supports than the one standing up. So something to keep in mind when you're doing prints, mainly because right in there is that huge gap. And the gap is the same here, but bigger, so easier to reach in. Overall, the one printed flat was more of a successful print. The other than dropping it on her head, 1, 2, 3, 4 overhangs that popped off during printing. Not to mention, you deal with wobble a lot more with the higher up you get. And you can see layer line issues and issues where the printer screwed up at different parts. Now, everything that I have seen from all the different flaws in both of these prints have more to do with the file and the printer themselves, nothing really to do with the filament. In fact, the filament came out very beautifully overall, like how it performed. Yeah, you can really see kind of the layer line issues on the back here. Now, if you're not a subscriber and or you saw the thumbnail, I have a feeling what you're here to see is the Slave Leia outfit, aka the Huttslayer. This was a tricky print for some parts, as PLA tends to be brittle and flexible. Technically, it may be more suitable to print this out of a stiff TPU or a nylon, but I wanted to see if I could accomplish this outfit with as little painting as possible. Now, what's nice about silk PLA is in order to get that sheen, they mix the PLA with TPU, which is why silk PLA is more stringy than regular PLA when printing. It also adds a tad bit more flex as well. I went through a few failed prints, and in fact, damaged this print here while removing the supports, if you look real closely there. And I ran into a trouble with this plate here. Apparently, this is a 3D scan of the actual plate, but because of the depth of the ridges here, essentially they couldn't get all the way to the edges, so there's actually some gaps in the model itself. So the first time that I printed it, when I was removing the supports in between the ridges here, these ridges just popped straight off. Now, I tried giving this a go to fix it myself, but I am rubbish at Blender, and I only managed to make it slightly better. So this is after I've removed the supports, and I did a quick heat blow on it, but this is going to require a lot more post-processing work than, say, pieces like the other pad here. We have the collar, which most people actually put on backwards. Usually when you're seeing cosplays, you see them with the rings in the front with the rings here, where actually Leia generally had them on the back, the idea being that you pull on the leash. If you looked at the bust, you will see the rings are on the back. And just to show, these are all the failed prints in my attempt to figure out how to best print this outfit. Even was able to print a working hinge, which I thought was really cool. So the next step here is actually going to get to post-processing. I'm basically going to be figuring this out as I go along, so you're going to come along on that journey with me. Ready? I started working on the bikini and its parts, and I realized I had almost forgotten the chain. I was able to print them in sequence so they'd be locked into place, but then I realized that I'd have a hard time attaching them to a closed loop here. So I went into Blender with the object and I cut out a slice and printed some individual linking rings. And give a little bend to them, and they should pop right in. You just have to be really, really careful because they're still PLA. This one broke. This will be a good tester piece then. So we're going to need to make this part silver with this part stay exposed. To that end, I did a bunch of testing. I've actually been collecting a lot of different silvers in preparation for making a 3D printed sword for an upcoming project. All right, so we have Stuart Simple's silver, Deco Arts Dazzling Metallics Zinc, Liquitex Basic Acrylics Silver, Turbo Dorks 10 Star, Plaid FX Armor Metallic, and then we have Lumiere by Jacquard. It's a pewter. I also grabbed Model Masters Enamel. This is a silver chrome trim is what this is called. I also tried out the Silver Leaf Rub and Buff, as well as Liquid Chrome pen. Then I also tried out some spray paints. We have the Army Painter. It's a primer, but it works well as just for painting. This is called Plate Metal. Another Army Painter, but this one is Gun Metal. We have Duplicolor Premium Acrylic Enamel, Paint and Primer. This ended up being more of just a dark gray. Then we have Rust-Oleum's Universal Metallic Paint and Primer in one. This is a flat soft iron. And the other one, but this is dark steel. And then also trying the art masking fluid. Paint this on, you peel it off. And it worked quite well to mask parts I did not want painted. So the question ends up being, what am I going to do? I think now that I have these broken pieces that just happened, I'm going to sand down, then I'm going to mask, and I'm going to try the Army Painters and the dark steel. These three are my winners. I think I'm going to put everything else up. Just finished sanding this loop, taking this diamond file triangular. So I worked into the grooves here to try and get rid of any sort of like gunk from the print itself. There's still, you can kind of see a little bit here. And then working on the edge, did that on both sides. Buffed it out with a 2000 because this is mostly going to stay exposed as is. Then I went in with a 120 on all of here, followed by a 400. It ended up coming out really nicely smooth and brought a lot of the gloss back. So I will probably need a second layer of this, but I just painted it on a little brush, dip it in, because it seems that it's filled in the crevices, but not so much the tips there. So it might need a second layer after it dries a bit in order to make sure it actually covers everything. All right, check this out. This one wasn't fully dry, so some of the paint kind of rubbed off. But essentially, after it dried, I rubbed on it with a 2000 grit, and you end up getting this kind of, this one looks like galvanized steel because of the dull look to it. Yeah, this one has more of a galvanized steel look to it. This one has a darker, kind of maybe more iron in it. More like a wrought iron, I guess, kind of look. I'm actually not sure which one I like better. This one has that darker, grittier look, but this one has more of like that kind of like almost hammered metal look. And both of them turned out really well with the masking. So I'm happy with that. Well, and part of that whole springiness that I talked about, look at that. So that when you slide it onto the arm here, some girls may have the same issue with me. However, this is where the heat gun will help to let you size it correctly. Same thing that I actually did with the back straps of the bra here. Originally, it actually printed right about this close together. And that made it very like, oh, you gotta like scooch into it to try and get in there. However, it actually can close up a lot easier now. This as it is would maybe fit on a child. However, again, heat gun, you can expand it, find the right spot you want it for. You're good to go with this. All right, so check this out. I am trying a bronze wash. Trying this, water down just a little bit, putting a wash on here. Adds a little depth to it, I think. Yeah, I think adding this bronze, see it's all dark spots in here now, really makes this thing stand out compared to what it was before. But it gives it more of a copper look. You mix the gold with the bronze and you get more of a copper look, which is great. It's definitely more what I wanted. I actually ended up dropping this one, but it was a clean line and put some 3D glue in the middle and on the sides, and it was good as new. Right here you can see the difference between the sanded and unsanded portions of the chain. Apparently I was completely overruled, down to a man. Everyone enjoyed the more complicated pattern, but I think I'm going to combine the procedures. So I'm going to use a couple levels of each, top it off with that brass or copper wash, and you'll end up with the final result. I masked the 2 rings here, and then after I peel it off, I will put the wash over everything. So I start off with 2 layers of the plate mail. Then I'm gonna sand it down, kind of just hit it with a little bit of both of the others, trying to get a little bit of a pockmarked feel. Apparently the pock marks along with the copper wash is what ended up really giving the texture that everyone seemed to say was the Star Wars universe feel. So that's what I'm gonna try and encapsulate. The collar here, depending on the direction that you print it, either curled up or curled down, will actually depend on the way the print turned out. And actually a lot of my failed prints, I tried the different directions to see which one had like the smoothest layer lines, the least amount of issues. And what I ended up on is actually printing claw up. All right, got the fans going to air things out, especially since I'm about to use 3D glue. We have to make sure that we are nice and ventilated while working with this. This is a really good way to glue PLA onto PLA, which is kind of what we're going to do. We have these tiny screws are going to go into the hinge here and into the pre-drilled holes here with the copper backing that I glued in using some JB Weld, since JB Weld is the best for metal onto plastic. This allowed me to extend it out because I printed it a little bit too small, so I added just an extra little bit. That was enough to fit some of the larger neck sizes, this extra little bit, and then this hinge will go on here, and while the screw will hold it into place, the 3D glue PLA will make sure that it is never coming off. So you're supposed to shake this up, which I've already done. Open away from you because it's a pressure lid. Make sure to wear a mask while working with this, preferably some gloves. And I use this on the entire back of the bra. Make sure to not put it on the hinge, but you have to use it fast because it dries fast. Just to make sure that nothing wiggles. Okay, now that that's in place, I need to feel what I'm doing because these screws are so tiny. And I just found these little guys at Lowe's for a few bucks. They are number 2, 1/4 inch, 12 pieces, Hillman brass. Might give them a copper wash and a little bit of a sanding to bring down the shininess. That's all I used. Now you see they really stick through here, little tips. Yeah, we're gonna have to use a Dremel tool for that. Yeah, put a little Dremel tool here and you have the first half. While the 3D printed hinge was functional, it easily came apart, so I figured adding a pintle to the knuckles would be a prudent course of action. What I'm doing here is taking the narrowest drill bit I could find and going through the knuckles in order to create a hole for the pinlet. With the addition of the pinlet, the hinge was definitely not going to come apart. Now, you got to be really careful when taking the supports off of the bra here. Angle's going to play a position in the supports. The problem I ran into is while pulling them out, this basically popped. And then same thing when I was removing the supports, the piece at the end here popped right open and I had to super glue it back here. I did have some layer line issues, some shifting happening during printing. That's going to take a lot more sanding and then probably filling in with some gold paint, something that kind of matches. If you'll notice, from what I've seen of different types of gold filament out there, you basically have cool gold and you have warm gold. You have something that's more mixed with silver, almost an electrum type, and then you have something that's almost mixed more with like a copper tone. This, what Duramic makes, is definitely more on the copper tone area. If you notice, depending on the angle that the light points in, you see either more of a light tone or a warm tone. Future Chris here. It was an unexpected move and I had to finish the cosplay in a hurry, misdocumenting a bit of it, so I'll notate some of it to you right now. The backing here, you can see I just used a quick D-ring and some silky smooth string with plenty of leeway in case I need to resize it for each model. Cloth backing was just a lot of hot glue
and cut it to shape. The bra was definitely the most difficult as far as creating a smooth sheen. It required the most sanding. I spent probably the vast majority of my time going through grits from close into the 100s to like the thousands over a long period of time until it looked where I needed it to be. Did some filler along with some color like I was saying, and then just finished it with a top coat of gloss spray. That's how we got this. What I ended up doing for the hairpins was actually some super glue and hairpins. So this piece was actually pretty straightforward. The front and back cloth was hot glued in place. Same thing with the sides here. I used a stretchy material, hot glued it in place on every single part except for one corner where I used a simple snap button, which again, I hot glued in place, making it really easy to take on and off. You just pop, you're good to go. And that's kind of the short of it. I cut down this video down to around 25 minutes, but I had an extra 30 minutes worth of notes, voiceovers, kind of showing what I went through. If you're interested in that, I'm going to place that extra footage on my Patreon. You're welcome to go check it out. You can get a little bit more detail, some of the nitty-gritty of the process that I went through to figure out what I needed to do, what worked, what didn't. So please go check out my Patreon content. I've already got some good amount of stuff on there. Really help support the channel so I can start making these videos more often. And if you have any questions, I hang out every Tuesday on Twitch, right here. And if you just want to kind of hang out and chat, I do have a Discord right here as well. So let's get back to the video. So I have moved and we have the cosplay completed, however. Things have been delayed a little bit, yeah. But we have a lovely Ari, if you'd like to come on out.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Ari here is a cosplayer, full-time content creator, and a mental health advocate. And she has been kind enough to test out the cosplay for us here. Now, what do you think about it?
I love it. First thing I noticed when I wore it is it's really lightweight compared to a lot of the stuff that I wear. I feel like it's much heavier. So I feel like, honestly, I have a 3D printer at home that I haven't even started using it. It makes me want to go home and print my own armor and props and stuff because it's so lightweight. Because the common issue a lot of cosplayers have at cons is like stuff is way too heavy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's just you're walking around all day. So I feel like this is really nice. Like you could walk around in this all day. It's so light.
So it keeps fatigue away, you know,
yeah,
by having the lightweight there. Mm-hmm. What do you think would be like any sort of like shortcomings from using a 3D printed costume like this versus the normal materials?
I think durability factor, maybe it might break easier, but I don't really see that as a really big issue unless you're just like tackling people in it. Like,
yeah, don't get hugged.
Don't get glumped.
Yeah.
Don't get glumped.
Yeah, so especially these straps here, if you can kind of turn for me. So these straps here can snap easily if you get hugged a little bit too much, especially down below here near the breastbone. Those are kind of weak points for it. So yeah, that's kind of the only main durability issue I've seen with this. So what do you think some of the things that are keeping you from getting started with 3D printing as cosplaying?
Honestly, time. Time is a factor. I think a lot of people relate to kind of being scared to diving into new things. It can be kind of scary and overwhelming sometimes. Okay. But this is making me want to just go in, no fear.
So when you say like time, you think like the initial learning that's involved with it?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of learning with it. Because I remember you were telling me there's different kinds of materials you can print with, and it seems like it's kind of a complicated process.
Yeah, you do become kind of get a minor in materials engineering, but what is it that you think you would do with 3D printing?
I've had an idea for the longest time now. My community knows this idea. I've been wanting to make dragon horns. And decorate them with like flowers and like all kinds of aesthetics. I have like a big sketchbook of just like concept designs, and I was thinking about printing horns. And honestly, this is so lightweight. Like it's making me just want to dive in. Because something that I've been worried about with the horns is like how heavy they would be. I want to make sure they're lightweight.
Yeah, so that actually comes down to infill. So there wasn't a lot of infill issues with this considering they're thin. But if you're working with larger objects, you have to talk about, you have the initial walls, and then you have what's inside of them, the kind of the filling part of it. That's called infill. So we're going to get you kind of posing for us. In fact, she's going to be modeling for some photos, as well as we're going to get some other ladies. So are you excited about our little project that we're going to have going?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, we're doing a calendar. So we're doing the Huttslayers. And there's going to be someone different for each month. We haven't decided what month for you yet, have we?
No, I don't think so.
So we'll have to figure that out, I suppose. But that's something coming, so stay tuned for that. Now, what do you have coming up?
In regards to content?
Yes.
I am working right now. Well, I just did a Bowsette cosplay. Yeah, I like to do my cosplays according to events with like releases in the year. So the Mario movie just came out, and I've had like 50 people asking me to do Bowsette. So I was like, let's just do it. So I have a Bowsette shoot coming up. I want to do a Zelda shoot next month when Tears of the Kingdom comes out.
Okay. For the lovely people who do not know you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitch at Ari_is_here. You can find me on Instagram at Ari.is_here. Yeah.
We'll have that right. All right. Thank you for coming and starring in our video. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as a guest star. For those who want to subscribe and see what's happening next, we are going to try and make 3D printed clear visors. So this might be a good way, actually something good for cosplayers who have normally had to use things like vacuform to create visors for masks and helmets and whatnot. This might be a different solution. So if you hit that subscribe button, you'll be notified the next time we come out with a video, and that will be on the visors. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.